Good morning. Today is Tuesday, June the 14th, 2016. It is 10 a.m. It's my pleasure to call to order the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers. Ms. Lisa Mosby, would you please call the roll?
Dennis Bridges. Here. Mark Cawthorn.
Here.
Robert Davis. Here. Jeff Duffer.
Here.
Robert Hams.
Here.
David Neal.
Here.
Charles Rahm.
Here.
Mr. President, all board members are here and accounted for.
Thank you, Ms. Mosby. First off, we'd like to recognize a new Assistant General Counsel, Ms. Allison Ratton, to the board.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
We're glad to have you.
Now, if I could, Mr. President, I'd like to introduce you to you all formally. Miss Allison Ratton came to our office about 3 weeks ago. She was a 2012 graduate of the University of Memphis School of Law. Prior to coming to our office, she previously worked at Cordell and Adams Keegan doing employment law issues. She came highly recommended by somebody currently in our department that does excellent work. In the 3 weeks that we've worked with Allison thus far, we found that she has a very professional nature, and we really appreciate her having on board. And I think she'll be very well suited for this board here. And as always, if you all have any questions or issues that may arise, you can contact me at any time. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Moving on to the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Rahm, a second by Mr. Helms. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Formal hearing today has been moved
Yes,
to
I'll
August.
address that.
Okay.
The opposing counsel talked to our attorney as well as the judge yesterday afternoon, late, probably 5 o'clock-ish, and the judge did grant a continuance. That case will be heard on August the 9th. So,
Thank you, sir. And the minutes for the May 10th, 2016 meeting will be presented to the July meeting for approval. On to the legal report. Ms. Allison Ratton.
Yes, we've got 13 cases today to review. Case number 1, 201-502-26121 for the establishment, 201-502-26122 for the funeral director, 201-502-26123 for the embalmer. In this case, the deceased ex-wife and the deceased wife attempted to collaborate to dispose of the deceased body. The ex-wife called the respondent funeral home inquiring about cremation services and set up a meeting to discuss those. But in the meantime, the wife elected to use a different funeral home as next of kin. The deceased body was at a hospital while all this was being determined. The hospital note stated the hospital had been authorized to release the body to the funeral home. The funeral director had called the hospital to see if the next of kin had released the body. The hospital advised him it had been authorized based on chart notes, so the director picked up the body from the hospital. But hours later, the wife called the director and asked him to transport the body to the authorized funeral home. The director transported the body to the authorized funeral home, and the investigation revealed that the former wife did not engage the services or authorize the funeral home to transport the body, and nor she did have authority to do so. And the wife never authorized the funeral home to transport the body. However, it appears the funeral home attempted to follow the wishes of the next of kin based on the information it received and promptly returned the remains when it was informed it was not authorized to dispose of the body. Therefore, we recommend closing this case with no action.
Motion to accept council's recommendation.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Helms, a second by Mr. Duffer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Case 4, 201-600-5691 for an establishment complaint. In this case, the deceased passed away in Oklahoma and had a pre-need arrangement in Memphis. The complaint alleges that the establishment overcharged for the services. The establishment attempted to follow the transferability policy by using an affiliate funeral home, but the closest affiliate was unavailable. The respondent states that the family did not want to wait for the affiliate and contracted with a funeral home that was local to transport the deceased. Upon arriving in Memphis, the family received a bill from the contracted funeral home exceeding $2,000 to cover the embalming and transport. The funeral home agreed to reimburse the family for the entirety of the amount and provided proof of the reimbursement. Therefore, our recommendation is to close this case with no action, as the funeral home did their part in fulfilling the pre-need obligations, and that they had no control over the deceased moving out of the coverage area and requiring transportation back to the establishment.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion from Mr. Duffer, a second by Mr. Davis. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I'd like to recuse myself from this next case.
Case 5-201-600-2571, Apprentice Funeral Director. 6, the complaint is 201-600-2572, Apprentice Embalmer. Case 7-201-600-2573 for the establishment. Case 8-201-600-2574 for the manager. In this case, the complainant worked at the funeral home for 21 years until his termination this January. He alleged the apprentice funeral director, apprentice embalmer, acted as a full manager and made business decisions as the respondent manager was on property for only a few hours at a time, embalmed bodies, regardless of whether a licensed embalmer was present, quoted prices in person over the phone, wrote insurance policies without the direction of a manager. The complainant also alleged he was dismissed for bringing these actions to the attention of the district manager for the respondent funeral home's parent corporation. The respondent apprentice funeral director denied these allegations. An investigation produced witness statements from persons employed by the funeral home, none of which corroborated the allegations. In fact, sworn witness statements indicate complainant was a problematic employee prone to making inappropriate comments. No credible evidence of unlicensed activity was produced. Therefore, our recommendation is a letter of instruction instructing the funeral home regarding apprentice practices and necessity of having licensed persons present during work performed by apprentices.
Motion to approve recommendation.
Second.
A motion by Mr. Rom, second by Mr. Duffer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, case 9-201-602-075 against an establishment. After a routine inspection on March 16, 2016 of the establishment, a field representative found the latest inspection report and current license for the crematory used by the establishment was unavailable for review. The respondent states that the owner's wife was helping with the inspection and was not familiar where the documentation was kept. The missing documents were submitted with the response of this complaint. The inspection also found one instance where a crematory authorization form was not on file. The respondents also submitted this documentation with their response. The field representative also noticed the failure of a report change in establishment ownership to the board within the required 10-day period. After a phone conversation with the previous owner, the field representative noted that the sale was effective November 15th. Respondent submitted a bill of the sale with the response indicating that the establishment was in fact sold April 18th of this year. The previous owner, which the field representative spoke with, signed a letter stating that he misunderstood the field representative when they spoke. The inspection also found that the respondent was without a manager for 20 days after the sale. According to a letter from the previous owner, on November 14th, he resigned as manager and appointed a new manager for the same time. The inspection was due to the change of ownership was due to the change of ownership, and at the time of the inspection, a licensed funeral director was not present. The respondent stated that the establishment manager was meeting with the family and was unavailable to meet when he arrived. The establishment owner's wife was working off-site, but after finishing up, met with the field representative at the establishment. Upon further review of the records, there was one file that did not have a statement of funeral goods and services selected or a letter of embalming. Respondent sent in a copy of a statement of funeral goods and services selected for this file and stated that there was not a letter of embalming for the file because the family arranged for a direct burial. There was also discrepancies found in the general price list as priced under the immediate burial section and that did not match the casket price list. The respondent attached a corrected general price list with their response. Therefore, our recommendation is a consent order for $750 for operating an establishment without a licensed funeral director as a manager and failing to submit an application for change in ownership within the statutorily specified time and authorization for a hearing. We also recommend a cease and desist letter to cease operations within 75 days of the bill of sale, which was dated April 18th, 2016.
Motion to accept.
Motion by Mr. Duffer, second by Mr. Bridges. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Case 10, number 201-6022-811 against an establishment. The complainant corresponded with this funeral home in order to obtain a death certificate for her supposed deceased husband and alleges the funeral home refused to provide it after she provided payment, a copy of her marriage certificate, and after calling multiple times. The complainant and the deceased did not share a residence at the deceased time of death and had not cohabited for quite some time, per her own admission. Respondent stated that it fully refunded her and directed her to contact the health department to get a death certificate. The funeral home further stated that its company policy is not to release certified death certificates to person other than the informant, who in this case was the deceased mother, who did not know whether the complainant and the deceased were still married at the time of the deceased's death. Complainant stated that she did in fact receive the corrected death certificate that she needed, although the money was never refunded to her, as the respondent said. Therefore, our recommendation is to close with the letter of warning regarding the appropriate treatment of customers.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Helms, a second by Mr. Rom. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Case 11 is number 201-6023-841 against an establishment. Number 12 is case number 201-602-3842 against the funeral director. Here, the complainant stated that her mother passed away on April 14th and she contacted the establishment to conduct the service. Complainant provided a response with a copy of an insurance policy as payment. Respondent contacted the insurance company a few days later and it was determined the policy had lapsed. Respondent informed the complainant of this and complainant's brother wrote a check covering the expenses on April 26th. Around April 27th, the respondent was notified by the insurance company that the policy had not lapsed and in fact did have value. Respondent submitted proof of a letter he sent to the insurance company on April 28th stating that the funeral home would not pursue the funeral assignments of the deceased. Complainant states that respondent never provided any papers listing the charges for services. Complainant also states that when she was given a copy of the list of charges, her signature had been forged. Complainant also states that there were extra charges that she didn't agree to. Respondent states that the complainant was charged $8,599 for the service. She also was charged $1,825 for the cemetery charges. According to the statement of funeral goods and services selected, which was submitted by the respondent, the complainant was charged $10,424. However, after choosing a different casket and receiving a family discount, the total price paid was the original price of $8,599. Complainant states that the respondent refused to give her a death certificate in cause of death form. Based on the statement of the funeral goods and services selected, the complainant did not request any copies of a death certificate. However, the respondent states that a copy of the death certificate was provided to the complainant's nephew in person on May 11th. Therefore, our recommendation is to close this case.
Motion to accept recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rom, second by Mr. Duffer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Case 13 is number 201-602-38101 against an establishment. Here, the complainant works for a funeral home in the same town as respondent funeral home. Complainant states that respondent funeral home placed advertisements in the newspaper that show price comparisons between the two funeral homes, but does not show a breakdown of service prices. Complainant included copies of the newspaper advertisements with her complaint. Respondent stated that these prices are directly off the complainant's general price list, and submitted copy of the complainant's general price list as proof as to where the figures originated. Complainant states that the advertisements also include photos of respondent funeral home employees, but does not designate which employees are licensed and which are unlicensed. Respondent states that according to the disclaimer on the advertisement, the two non-licensed personnel are marked with an asterisk and each employee is labeled with their specific title. The second advertisement photo shows two licensed employees and their 7-year-old son. However, this photo does not designate which persons possess current licensure. Respondent states that this is a family photo. However, both adults in the picture are licensed. One is a funeral director, one is a pre-need sale agent, and the child is 7 years old and should not be misconstrued as being licensed in this capacity. Complainant also states that respondent manager refers to himself as being the owner. Respondent submitted a letter from the parent corporation which states that he does in fact serve as a managing partner and owner. Our recommendation is to close this based on statute 62-5-106 regarding advertisements and 62-5-314 in the Tennessee Code. Use of unregistered person's name. The funeral home did not violate any part of these statutes.
Motion to accept recommendation.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Rom, a second by Mr. Helms. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
There are 4 cases in the represent category today. The first one against an establishment is number 201-5001-4902. Here, the original consent order was proposed where a respondent was to voluntarily surrender its license to the Tennessee Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers, as respondent was found to have submitted death certificates that fraudulently listed a non-employee as the embalmer, as well as additional misconduct. Upon additional information submitted, it was determined that respondent is no longer operating an establishment and has submitted a letter stating such to the board office. Based on new information, I recommend closing this case.
Motion to accept.
Motion by Mr. Helms, a second by Mr. Davis. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Second case is 201-600-6081 against an establishment. Similarly, the original consent order was proposed where respondent was to voluntarily surrender its license to the Tennessee Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers, as respondent was found to have submitted death certificates that fraudulently listed a non-employee as the embalmer, as well as additional misconduct. Upon additional information submitted, it was determined that respondent is no longer operating an establishment and has submitted a letter stating such to the board office. Based on new information, I recommend closing the case.
Accept.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cochran, second by Mr. Duffer. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
And finally, we've got case 3, number 201-501-1231 against an establishment. Case 4, number 201-501-1232 against a funeral director. Here, the complainant's mother had a pre-arrangement with the respondent. The pre-need contract picked out a casket and a specified casket and a specified bronze tone vault. When the respondent died, when the deceased died, respondent submitted merchandise of lesser quality. The family of the deceased alleged they asked respondent at the visitation if the casket was the product contracted for, and respondent stated it was. The family met with respondent the next day prior to the burial service to try to get the merchandise contracted for, but respondent refused to provide it unless the family paid an additional $3,100. The family also alleged at the meeting respondent tried to physically pull members of the family out of his office after they commented about not getting what they paid for, and respondent kicked out the deceased son. The family moved the deceased to a different funeral home for the burial service following the meeting. Our recommendation is a consent order with a civil penalty of $2,000 and an authorization for a hearing.
Was there any response from the funeral home, or from the respondent? I mean, did he submit anything? Do we know?
This case was originally heard several months back and was placed in litigation monitoring status. They've had a civil trial, and so it's being represented as that. I don't believe we originally received a response from this establishment.
If you would
I'll
like
go
us to.
double check.
I mean, that's like I said, I was just curious if he ever submitted his side of that story.
If you want to move on to the next thing, let me run check real quick. I'll double check for sure,
Okay.
and then
for
we'll
you.
be right back.
That is all for the legal report.
Thank you, Ms. Ratton, for the legal report. Moving on to the director's report, Mr. Robert Gribble.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board members, the first thing I have listed is a budget report. I don't have a detailed budget report to give you today, but to tell you that we're tracking to be self-sufficient. Of course, that's a requirement for every regulatory board. It would be self-sufficient. And with there are a lot of renewals coming up on June the 30th, this is a revenue, then it's always greater in the even years and less in the odd years. But as you recall, when Deputy Commissioner and Assistant Commissioner were here, probably at your first board meeting, our reserve balance is very excellent. So normally about September, October, we get I meet with the accounting manager for the Assistant Commissioner's office each month, and we look at financials and information. And anytime you have questions, we'll be glad to present that to you, or ask Mr. Bill Holston, who's the accounting manager, to come down and talk with you as well. But I have no problem with self-sufficiency. And, you know, the board just a few years ago reduced the funeral director and embalmer renewal fee from $275 to $235. After we get through this year and see how it affects, you know, this is the first time we've had the large renewal. So sometime latter part of this year, first part of next year, we'd like to present some information to you to see if you think we might be able to reduce some kind. It does no good to accumulate a large reserve. As you gentlemen know, as business operators, we need a reserve. I used to think it was a 1-year reserve, that we need enough in reserve for 1 year's operating expenses. A lot of people tell me now that you need that for 2 years, but beyond that, we need to look, because the money is the licensee's money. All the money that this board has is paid by licensees or applicants to the board. So we'll hopefully have some information. It may be after the first part of next year to present to you, or first part of January, February, to present to you to consider whether or not we think we can lower some type of renewal fee to whether director and embalmer fees again, if you want to look at doing it as establishment fees or application fees or whatever. But we'll hopefully have some information to present to you in January, February regarding that. As far as the legislative update, thanks to legal counsel, you have before you a one-sheet, it's on your iPad, but let me mention to you, I've emailed this to each one of you because I think it's something you probably want to have to be able to use at the funeral home. And for any of the people that might be listening on the video, if they'll go to their website and sign up for notifications, then it's items like this that they receive emails regarding. So it's very important. The legislature passed these bills this year which affect the Board of Funeral Directors and Embalmers. Public Chapter 838. This law amends the requirements for obtaining a funeral director's license. Specifically, the law permits applicants for a funeral director's license to substitute an associate's degree from a college accredited by the American Board of Funeral Service Education for 1 year apprenticeship. This takes effect on July 1, 2016. Of course, as you recall, this has been the policy of the board, but legal reminded us it needed to be put into law, and that's been done, and so that's effective. Public chapter is effective July the 1st. Public Chapter 1053. This law is commonly known as the Right to Earn a Living Act, and it creates a requirement that each state licensing authority submit all existing or pending regulations to the chairs of the government operation committees. The committees shall conduct a study of the entry regulations from each licensing authority, create a report of findings, and hold hearings in order to remove unnecessary or overburdensome regulations for those people who want to enter the licensed professions. Obviously, we'll do what the Act requires us to do, and then the Government Operations Committee will have their hearings, and then we'll bring back to you whatever information or directives they provide. And typically, the President of the Board is invited to that meeting when the Government Operations Committee meets. So whenever that is, whenever that happens, why the board chair is typically invited. Public Chapter 915, which this law amends fees that may be charged for the interment of a veteran. Specifically, the law prohibits any fee to be charged for the interment of an eligible veteran in a state veteran cemetery and limits the fee to $300 for the interment of an eligible veteran's spouse. This law, like the one above it, and I failed to mention that on Public Chapter 1053, but 1053 and Public Chapter 915 both took effect upon the governor's signature, so those laws are in effect as we speak. And last is Public Chapter 911, which defines funeral merchandise for prearrangement insurance policies, and this takes effect on January the 1st of 2017. A bill that the Cemetery Association of Tennessee and the Tennessee Funeral Licensee report. This is a report of licenses administratively approved by the Executive Director pursuant to the Board Authority for the period of May 10, 2016 through June 13, 2016. Establishment, one name change, and then about, looks like 5 individuals that we issued license to through administrative acts approved by the board. Proposed establishment report. There's one establishment reported closing since the last board meeting. That's Signature Funeral Services, 5359 Knight Arnold Road in Memphis, Tennessee. And the manager of that facility, Mr. Rodney Eric Williams, will be before the board today regarding a pending establishment application at a different location. Disciplinary action report. This is a report of consent orders administratively accepted and approved by the Executive Director pursuant to the Board Authority for the period of May 1, 2016 through May 31, 2016. This report contains 2 of those. You can look at those and see what those pertain to. $150 civil penalty, dozens of $2,500 civil penalty, and the violations are noted there, and also the respondents as well. Complaint report. As of yesterday, Ms. Mosby says that we had 1 complaint against an apprentice, 1 against a funeral director and or embalmer, and 18 establishment complaints, which makes a total of 20 complaints that we have. President, that concludes my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that any board member has.
Mr. Gribble, ask for an approval for this director's report.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Helms, second by Mr. Duffer. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. On to the approval of license applications.
Okay, the first one is the individual application. Mr. Mashman, if you would, please come up and have a seat there at the microphone, and when you speak, make sure that the red button or the red circle on the microphone is lit when you speak. This is Joseph Aaron Mashburn from Lawrenceburg, Tennessee. His application is for a funeral director and embalmer. He's seeking this licensure today, and the reason that I could not administratively consider his application for approval is there were 2 complaints that had been filed against Mr. Mashburn. One of them was dealt with previously to this board meeting, and there was a letter of instruction issued in that. One was dealt with in today's board meeting, and the board approved a letter of instruction there as well. Gentlemen, it would be my recommendation to you that you consider this for approval. But Mr. Mashburn, board members, that's your, but he's met all the legal requirements, and that's the reason that I could not, as a director, look at administratively approving it.
Thank you, sir.
Any comments to the board, Mr. Mashburn?
Yes, sir. Just wanted you to know that the first complaint was a fault of mine. You know, at the time, the licensed funeral director that is usually my manager was out on vacation. And, of course, the guy that was the complainant that had on me today called me 30 minutes before the funeral started and said he had a stroke and he couldn't come in. And so I was kind of put in a position to either cancel a funeral or, so I chose the latter. And, but of course I admitted to my mistakes, and I always will, where the second one was, of course, just a disgruntled employee. I've always helped these families in their time of need. I've never had a complaint on me from a family. Always will, and always have taken this job very seriously. It's a very respectable business. I was also a law enforcement, and I actually see this as, you know, helping out a lot more in this area of business. So I do hope you do consider me for licensure, and you will never, I'm strictly by the book, always will be, and I'll make sure that nothing happens again where I got up here before this board. Thank you. Been in funeral service. I graduated in December of 2012. I went down to Florence, Alabama. I did a year and a half down there because I was supposed to do 2 years. It doesn't reciprocate down there. Then I went back into law enforcement after a year and a half. And then I was called to come up here to Lawrenceburg last April. So I've been in working for about 4 years now. Yes, sir, I have. Very much so.
How long have you been with your last funeral home?
Sorry, sir.
How long have you been in Lawrenceburg?
Lawrenceburg, I started back in April. April 1st is when I started. Mr. Gribble approved my apprenticeship. April 13th, I found out that, of course, Alabama doesn't reciprocate up here, so I had to do another year of apprenticeship.
You got a letter of recommendation from a funeral home in West Tennessee. What's the relationship there?
We actually work with them over in Jackson, Tennessee. Me and him have gotten together during meetings and stuff with SEI, helping them with their certificate runs, you know, just things like that. I'm in contact with them quite often.
unusual for a board to approve or to have a licensure, someone like you, we've just had some immediate complaints about. That's our concern.
Yes, sir. Understandable. And like I said, this one here, it was back in January, and he kind of knew about this past complaint before he was let go. So as you can see, if you got the letters from the past employees, he actually said, I got rid of the last guy. If I don't like him, I'll get rid of him as well. And like I said, when he knew about that past complaint, of course, I admitted to. I did it. Like I said, 30 minutes before service was called, my hands were full. But as far as that goes, he knew about this complaint as soon as he actually came in. He knew exactly who turned it in. He knew everything about it. So basically, he basically ran with this once he was let go, because of course he thought I was the reason for his termination, which I wasn't.
Ashburn, if you will, explain to the board what you explained to me in the phone call one day about what arrangements have you made in case you were
Yes, sir.
shorthanded in another situation.
After this situation happened, the first time on December 6th, I got with my market leader manager, and I told him there was no way possible I can depend on this individual to be there for my apprenticeship. So he made the recommendation of me calling over there to Mr. William Powell, which is over there in Pulaski, 15 minutes from me. And from any situation from then on forward, Toby was there if I needed him. In case Alton, who is my 78-year-old manager that's retiring, was out of business or anything, because I could not depend on this individual. So anytime Alton had to be off for a doctor or anything like that, William Powell's my witness. He's been there. I think he's had to come for me twice so far. So I made sure that this would never, ever happen again after that first one. And it never did happen again. You got my word on that. I'm not afraid to admit to my mistakes if I made a mistake or if I've done something this past. But the things he had were completely not only hearsay, but they were really ridiculous, in my opinion. But I work with 3 God-fearing people, even one preacher, and there's no way they would let me in any way, shape, or form do anything that he stated, period. But I did make one mistake. I apologized for it. I admitted to it. But this second complaint, that was by far nothing. That was him being disgruntled, mad at me because he thought I was the one that got him fired. And so he turned all this in because he knew about my past complaint.
So the first complaint, that situation. So Mr. Turnbow, 30 minutes before the service, is that he?
No, sir. No,
Okay.
sir. So Mr. Turnbow was out of town. He was in Nashville
Okay.
getting married.
Okay.
Okay. He was out of, commission. This guy here was supposed to be there for me for that service.
Okay.
I actually did a service at my competitor's cemetery. And 30 minutes before I was called, I even showed the hours where he was not there that day when he was supposed to be there with me. 30 minutes, he called me and Virgil while we was there. It's another funeral assistant. I've had a stroke. I can't show up. And I said, what am I supposed to do? Cancel this funeral? I mean, what am I? He said, you'll be all right. He said, you've done a year and a half down there in Florida. You'll be okay. You'll be okay. So it's just one of them deals where I had to take the lie. But, I mean, I was not afraid to admit to it. And like I said, and then after that happened, that's when we got a hold of my sister funeral home. And anytime I needed them, he was there for me. That way this situation never occurred again.
Couple of clarifications.
Yes, sir.
The gentleman that had a stroke, he was able to call you?
Yes, sir. And he was actually at work that following Monday. Yeah.
Secondly, if approved for your licensure, what will your position be?
My position right now will be funeral director and embalmer. Then I will be taking the Alton spot as manager when everything is approved through there.
What timetable is that?
Just as soon as we, everything gets to clear here, then once we turn in all the information and everything through SCI and everything, we'll go from there.
So you'll be working for an SCI firm?
Yes, sir.
SCI planning to have any type of managerial training for you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's your call volume?
My call volume is about anywhere between 80 to 100 a year.
Doesn't leave any room for mistakes.
Yes, sir. very much so.
Sounds like you made plans to have cover from your sister funeral home.
Oh, by far,
So
by far.
I commend you for that.
Thank you.
And being proactive on that.
Thank you.
Ashburn, my only concern, as Mr. Helms indicated a while ago, is here we are having disciplinary action in one part of the meeting and looking at acceptance
Yes, sir.
5 minutes later.
Yes, sir. And to my defense, like I said, this situation here, if I made a mistake in this fast, I made that mistake in December. I learned from it. I made actions to make sure that never happened again. And so that was the only complaint, in my opinion, that, I did. This one here, like I said, is disgruntled employee 101. In his complaint, he said, I was here so many years, this is what I've got to tell you. Even in our law book, I notice it states that you don't wait until you're fired to turn these actions in. You do it when you see these actions. So he waited until he was fired, then turned in this, ridiculous statement of everything he could think of. And of course, I've never done any of that, especially after the December 6th incident. So,
And just to confirm, I mean, the complaint today was essentially closed, correct? I mean, we sent a letter of instruction just for
Yeah, and I
for
thought Mr.
informational purposes,
Never
right?
proven, but apparently there was no proof.
That's correct. There is no corroborating evidence to support the claims against him.
And gentlemen, I know that probably this is very minute, but a letter of instruction is actually not disciplinary action. Legal counsel might want to talk to that. I mean, when you consider disciplinary action against a person, that a letter of instruction, letter of warning, a letter of caution is not considered official disciplinary action. It is put in their file and can be considered in future complaints, but legal probably needs.
No, that's correct. Everything that you're saying is correct. Yes, it does stay in the file. It's for future reference, and we keep a list of everything that happens, whether it's closed as a certain action, but a letter of instruction, or a letter of warning, or whatnot, probably just highlights the rule or the law that they need to ensure that they have compliance on. But it is correct. That is not a formal disciplinary action that's recorded anywhere.
thank you.
I mean, given that information and if everything's in order from Mr. Gribble's perspective, I recommend approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Cochran, second by Mr. Helms. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Mashburn.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Neil, can we go back and get that last complaint since Mr. Zach is back with his information?
All right, so I did look it up. We did receive a response from the establishment originally, and this was back from May of 2015. And he also included a copy of the prearranged funeral contract. And basically, according to the prearrangement contract, an amethyst steel casket was what was selected and what was written down. So there wasn't any specific name brand written down at all there. It was very vague. And so whenever the civil action was finished, during the civil action, depositions were taken. Just numbers of them. And so all of those were received, and this was actually sent over to a litigator because we thought that it was to that process already. Once the litigator reviewed it, she come back with this recommendation. So that's where that recommendation came from after her entire review of the civil case and everything.
She recommended the civil penalty.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Need a motion for that, don't we?
Yes.
I'll make that motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Helms, second by Mr. Bridges. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Establishments.
Hey, gentlemen, if you will, please come up and have a seat. I think there are 3 chairs there. Kindly pull the mics toward the middle so that whichever 3 you're speaking, the mic should pick you up. The establishment application today is Signature Funeral Home by Premier. The proposed manager is Rodney Eric Williams. This establishment is to be located 5279 Arnold Road in Memphis, Tennessee. It's a new establishment. The ownership is a corporation, and the owner is Signature Funeral Home by Premier Incorporated, located at the same address, 5279 Arnold Road in Memphis, Tennessee. There are three gentlemen before you today, and each one of them can just introduce themselves and make whatever comments they want to the board.
Thank you, Board, for having us this morning. My name is Roland Gosey from Arkansas. I am a third-generation funeral director, funeral home owner, and operator. Our family business was started in 1941. The branch that I own was established in 1950. And so I'm also presently the president of the Arkansas Funeral Directors and Morticians Association, as well as a member of the National Funeral Directors and Morticians Association. We're here today, of course, for licensure for establishment there in Memphis, Tennessee, and are looking forward to opening that business with approval and the sanction of the board. I have our other operating partner here, Mr. Walker. I'll let him introduce himself.
Thank you, and good morning, members. Bill Walker. I am owner of Premier Funeral Home in Little Rock, Arkansas. I have been such since about 15, 16 years ago. I am a first-generation funeral owner. I'm not yet a director, but I am a member of the to have served the many families we've served there in the Little Rock and metropolitan areas, and look forward to bringing some of the good work that we try to do to the men. I would like to note for the record, since you've just got through dealing with many complaints as I've witnessed, we've never had a complaint at all against our establishment, and I think Mr. Gosey can say well. That funeral home we purchased from another funeral home, Miller Elston Funeral Home, that had been in business for 50 years or so. In addition to that, my other experience is I've been a past member of the legislature. I served in the Arkansas State House for 8 years, in the Senate for 8 years. Recently, under the previous administration, before the election, I was in the governor's cabinet as director of one of his state agencies. So just legislative, governmental, regulatory experience, along with having been in the funeral business and developed a real passion and a calling for that business. One of the principal that's a silent partner that's not present with us today. I don't know whether I should introduce, you already know Mr. Rodney, but I will let him do his own introduction.
My name is Rodney Williams, and I am a licensed funeral director and embalmer. I am very pleased to be able to be a part of a team that's going to be able to support my vision and enhance my vision, enhance the quality and the care that we can provide to families. This is a big stepping stone for me, and I'm here today just to move forward in this process.
President, the reason that I could not administratively review this application for consideration or approval, two different things. One thing is, we've, based on past experience, if we have unlicensed owners, and although one of these gentlemen, Mr. Rowland, is a licensed funeral director and probably an embalmer as well, I believe he said in Arkansas, he's not yet licensed in Tennessee. He had a conversation with us about doing reciprocity and getting his license in Tennessee, and I see no reason why he cannot proceed in doing that based on a short conversation that we had about that. And the other gentleman said, although he has many experiences in other ways, he's not a licensed funeral director in Tennessee and not a licensed funeral director in Arkansas. So anytime that we have establishment applications where they're non-licensed owners, then we're going to bring those before the board based on their past history. We just, and your agreement with, my agreement with you and your agreement with me, I think that's what we need to do. Now beyond that, there's a greater reason, and that's the gentleman sitting at the very end over there who has been before this board many times for disciplinary action. And there's no way that I would consider review of an application by a licensee who has been disciplined by a board for as many serious matters as what Mr. Williams has. But that's your call and that's your decision as to what you want to do about that. But that's the reason. Those two reasons are reasons that this application is before the board today.
I have a question. Is any ongoing legal action against Mr. Williams at this point in time that's not closed?
There's no ongoing legal action I'm aware of. There may be a new complaint opened based on some information we obtained yesterday. That complaint has not been opened, so there's no, he has settled all of his complaints, and if the board would like, we have a copy of those consent orders that have been previously settled by Mr. Williams. If you'd like to look at those together, then
I would.
I think that'd be helpful for the new board members. Understanding, Mr. Williams, you're the proposed manager of the new establishment? Okay.
Manager on this Signature Funeral Service that closed.
I closed Signature Funeral Services, but yes,
The owner of that
I was the manager.
manager there. So you're going across the street to another facility then?
Yes, to a facility that's well equipped.
This new facility, was it a former funeral home?
Yeah.
What was the name of that funeral home?
I don't, and I know it was the one that you guys had shut down. I don't remember the name. Hickory Hills. Funeral.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's the one that's been in the news this year, earlier. A lot of serious complaints.
Yes, sir.
A lot of news.
Yes, sir.
And
Actually, that's how I found out about the location. We'd already been kind of taking a look around in the Memphis area for a facility, and when I saw that facility, I immediately inquired about its availability, and we sought after to try to get it.
I saw your employee list of your proposed employees. Any of those employees a part of the previous funeral home?
No, sir.
No ties at all.
No, sir.
Helms. When we received the first list, if you'll notice that those lists, one is dated May 3, 2016, the other one is dated May 26, 2016.
Right.
So Mr. Bozeman is the field representative for that area. He went out to do an inspection, and there were only two employees listed. Mr. Rodney E. Williams, who is a licensed funeral director and embalmer, and Mr. Harry White, who is unlicensed, who is going to be a full-time employee. Well, Mr. Bozeman and I had a conversation, and based on what had happened at Signature Funeral Services unlicensed activity, and Mr. Williams being the only person there, it's my understanding Mr. Bozeman's here today if you want to ask him questions, but it's my understanding that Mr. Bozeman mentioned to him, do you have other people involved? If they do, what are their roles and what are they doing? And then subsequent to that, then the second list was submitted, which is I didn't count them, but there's eight or nine different people there. But the only other licensed person is Miss Weston, who is to be, she's a licensed funeral director and embalmer as well, and she's to be a part-time employee. There's a gentleman listed there who is also a partner in another funeral service, or was at the time of issuance, and we've not been notified otherwise, Fred McWilliams. He is listed as a part-time employee and unlicensed. He, at the time that Justin Ford Funeral Home received their license, he was one, if I recall correctly, he was one, and I didn't look this up yesterday, but he was one of the two principals of that business. That was a concern that the field representative brought to him at the time. I don't know what their call projection is, but I know that Mr. Williams has operated business, has done a tremendous amount of calls, and at his other location, good call volume.
Mr. Williams, what about the lady, Mrs. Weston? Can you tell us a little bit about her? If she's going to be part-time, is what your plans are?
Ms. Weston often helps. Ms. Weston often helps out with services when we have multiple services. If there's anything that I cannot perform, she can and will, with regard to embalming, with regard to funeral directing. She always steps in. She hasn't always been around, but when she became a part of my life, everything got a little bit easier for me. And initially, I was by myself, and I had to do everything by myself and make all the decisions by myself. You know, she helps me to get that taken care of.
She employed at another establishment?
She is employed at another establishment, her father's funeral home, Calvary Funeral Home.
There's one other thing I'd like to point out to you on the filing information from the Secretary of State's office for their corporate filing. The registered agent for process is listed as Orville E. Abrams Jr., CPA, and it lists the address of the establishment, 5279 Arnold Road in Memphis. I requested our legal folks to do some looking yesterday, and I was informed that Mr. Abrams is not a licensed certified public accountant in the state of Tennessee. He is in Arkansas, but not in Tennessee. But to look at that and to review that, it appears to me that this indicates that he's a certified public accountant in the state of Tennessee.
If I may speak to that, and it's certainly not intended to mean that we just use that for the mailing address, but he's my accountant, has been for a number of years, and so corporation papers on our behalf, and so. Sorry, it went off. My bad.
I guess my concern is that if, to introduce myself, sir, Frank Lando from the Chief Counsel for the department, is it correct that you have your CPA who lives in Arkansas, works in Arkansas, as your registered agent for your Memphis address?
I think that's correct.
So if we send something certified mail to your registered agent on Knight Arnold Road, I believe, in his name, the person who would sign for it would not be him.
Probably would not be here.
So I
We would have
can't,
to
I
get
wouldn't be
that
able
to
to,
him.
it would be difficult for me to effectuate service at that location. Have somebody, if your registered agent is physically not there. Does that make sense?
Sure, and we don't have a problem with whatever adjustments need to be made. If that's what we were told was that we needed to have a Memphis address. Since he is and has done the accounting services for me for more than 10 years, he doesn't have a Memphis address. So whatever adjustments that you would recommend that would alleviate that issue or that concern, we'd be happy to do. That's just what we were told we needed to do, and so that's what we used.
Well, I just think it'd be best that your registered agent is somebody who's physically located at the, so that if any mail comes, certified mail, that it actually, the person signing for it is actually the person that it's delivered to. For instance, if I send something certified mail and I restrict it so that the only person who can pick up that certified mail is the CPA who's in Arkansas, then in order for the Postal Service to release it to him, they would require him to drive from Arkansas to Memphis in order to pick up our certified letter, because a lot of times we send them restricted, meaning we don't want anybody to sign except for the person to whom we'd have addressed it.
Sure.
Does that
not
make
a problem.
sense?
Yes,
Okay.
no problem. And we'll do that, or if it's permissible for us to use the Arkansas address, he'd certainly be willing to use his address, but I didn't know whether that was allowable.
Well, I'm
Either
not.
way, it's fine with us.
I'm not sure. That's usually a rule from the Secretary of State's office whether or not.
Okay.
My experience is usually someone in Tennessee. I would imagine it probably has to be someone in Tennessee, but I don't know that for sure.
Either way, we'd be happy to make the adjustment. Sure.
And board members, there's one other concern that we have from the office. Yesterday, we had legal, not we in the office, but the legal had asked Mr. Bozeman to do a drive-by the old location that Mr. Williams closed, and also Mr. Bozeman drove by the proposed new location. And I think it'd be beneficial for, if the board will allow for Mr. Bozeman to, you don't need to hear it from a third party, you need to hear it directly from him, and he has some photos that he would like to submit to you as well, if that's permissible to the board.
Bozeman.
Yesterday, I was working in Memphis at the request of our legal department, went by the old Signature Funeral Home to make sure they had removed all signage from the building, make sure there was no activity. The signage had been removed, and I didn't see any evidence of any activity there. Signature by Premier, the proposed new establishment, is located right down the street. You can actually see both businesses from one location. Went by there to make sure there wasn't any signage up, to make sure there wasn't any activity. I noticed on the side of the building there was a limousine, a hearse, and then another limousine in a row. They were parked real close together, probably within 6 or 8 inches of each other. Didn't have any signage in the windows of the hearse or anything. As I was leaving, I noticed something in the back of the hearse, so I stopped and took some photographs, and it appeared to be a shipping container like you would take to the airport. I didn't open it, but you can tell from one of the photographs it does look like that the hearse the level is indicative of a shipping container with possibly a body in it. I called our legal department, and they suggested that I call Mr. Gosey and have someone meet me at the funeral home. This was at approximately 11 o'clock. I called Mr. Gosey. He said he would have somebody to come there. At approximately 11:30, Mr. Rodney Williams came to the funeral establishment. I can't be sure. I thought there was somebody in the vehicle with him, but I'm not positive about that. We went into the building, into the funeral establishment, and I told Mr. Williams that I needed to see if there was a body in the hearse, and he assured me there wasn't. He said he would have to locate the keys. It took him a few minutes to locate the keys. Never did find the keys, actually. I said, well, we'll go back outside. When I got back outside, approximately 13 minutes later, the hearse was gone. And Mr. Williams acted like he didn't know there was even a hearse there, because he had parked in the front of the building and this was on the side. So that's the information that I have for you today.
Am I to understand that the First Signature facility was closed voluntarily? They closed it themselves?
Yes, Mr. Williams closed that. According to the emails, Mr. Williams, you're welcome to address this if I get it incorrect, but it's my understanding from the emails that we had that at the very latest, at the close of business on Saturday, which would have been the 11th, that all activity would cease regarding Signature Funeral Services. Is that your understanding, or is?
Was it the 13th?
Yes, it was the 13th. It was my understanding in the emails that you'd sent to me that it would cease on the 11th, and then you were going to FedEx or somehow overnight transmit your establishment license to the board so that we would receive them yesterday. And because we would not be here on Saturday, I had mentioned in an email that we would officially close the license in the regulatory board system yesterday, which we did.
That's correct. That's correct. It was discussion about two bodies that I needed to make this disposition of.
One going to Mexico and one to Guatemala, correct?
One going to Mexico, one going to Guatemala. Although you couldn't advise me, you told me as long as I am my establishment is active. It is when it's not active that I cannot. When the status goes inactive is when I need to completely cease and have everything taken care of. And that's exactly what happened.
Williams, was that yours? That I seen the picture of?
It is not my hearse. I do have access to it.
It was on that property, though, right?
It is correct.
And there was a body in that shipping container?
Yes, it was. Mm-hmm.
So, was that family being served under which establishment?
Signature Funeral Services.
License were surrendered.
I had not surrendered the license, no. But I have the last email. I have the last email I got from Mr. Gribble right here. If somebody wants to pass these out, they're welcome to. It's 3 pages of here. Because I wanted to have a clear and concise understanding.
So do I.
Of what my position was with regard to getting the body shipped out. Okay?
Let me go back just a little bit. And it's my understanding there's a new complaint. Is that correct? That is not opened yet?
My statement was there may be a complaint.
Maybe, okay.
We've got to have a discussion with legal and decide whether or not to open a complaint based on the actions that Mr. Bozeman found yesterday.
Okay, so that's concerning yesterday's.
Everything prior to yesterday is settled. It all goes back to what happened yesterday.
The reason I was asking was because, we had an agreed final order that the board took action on in November of 2015, which suspended Mr. Williams's license for 62 days. But if there's any action that was going to come for us later, we could terminate his license. And that's why I'm asking for that clarification.
And there may be, and board members, I'll submit to you that this is not an accurate representation of our emails. This is one email at a particular instance, and I may have to ask you to recess for 5 or 10 minutes for me to look these emails up. But there's one particular email I want to find and read to you, and it'll take me just a minute to find it. But
I do believe that is the final email there. I just wanted to make sure that and read it very clearly. I want to make sure that there be no issues. And he said, as long as the status is open, as long as the status is, well, you can read it there. The status, and that is a screenshot of the status and the date and time stamp on the picture showing that the status was active. The status went inactive at some point after midnight last night.
Gentlemen, my last email to Mr. Williams was yesterday at 1:30 p.m., and I said, Rodney E. Williams, I received an email from you on June 7, 2016 at 7:55 p.m., wherein you stated that your firm, Signature Funeral Services, located at 5359 Knight Arnold Road in Memphis, had 2 deceased human remains to be shipped internationally, one to Mexico and one to Guatemala. Please respond to this inquiry by providing documentation, including but not limited to shipping manifestation documents regarding the disposition of these 2 deceased human remains with Signature Funeral Services. As of this time today, I've received no response to that email. It was sent to the same email address that numerous communications were sent to last week.
Did you receive that, Mr. Williams?
I hadn't received it until we were on the way here this morning.
On the license for the funeral home that he had, the Signature Funeral Services, that license was given between May the 1st and May the 31st. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
On his license for the signature, was his license given up between May the 1st and May the 31st? Was the establishment closed at that time?
No, sir. It was closed since then, and actually, that's a good point. We should have actually held the closing of that establishment till the next board meeting, because it was not actually received during May, but it was received subsequent to that. So, but I wanted you to have a true and accurate picture of what was happening, so I wanted you to know that he closed his business and he was not trying to operate two businesses. So that's one reason why we, in my report, I said since the last board meeting, but I was going up through, yesterday to give you an accurate report.
At this point in time, there's the Signature Funeral Home by Premier. You don't have a funeral home right now.
That's correct.
Okay.
What was the exact date of closure for the former Signature Funeral Services? Do we have that?
5359 Not Arnold Road.
Right.
It went inactive this morning after midnight.
In our licensing system, it did, but he had represented it to me in an email, and I don't want to misquote him, so I'd like to find the email to give it to you to read from you. But he had represented an earlier time.
But my subsequent, but your last email indicated as long as there was open status, that everything that I could continue operating after the status went inactive, and that's what I went on. You say I cannot legally advise you, but this, and you all have a copy of that.
I've just got a personal problem that our field rep was at your funeral home and saw 3 cars, and it had a question about what was in the hearse, and then
let me address
it disappeared.
that. Let me address that. Let me address that. I give instructions to employees. They had instructions on what to do with everything. We had to be out of the building. We had to get those bodies out of the building. We couldn't just leave the bodies there, right? I had to get the bodies out of the building. At 10:37, the flight arrangements were made. I got a call to meet Mr. Bozeman at the funeral home. When I pulled up, I didn't even see Mr. Bozeman out there. I went in the funeral home. Mr. Bozeman came in, it's a body in the hearse. Well, my heart dropped because I know my people knew not to pick a body up. I hadn't picked up a body, Signature hadn't picked up a body since the 10th. So my heart dropped. He said, it's a shipping contract out there in the hearse. I said, well, let me get the keys. He said, I want to see what's in it. I didn't understand why he had to see what was in the hearse, though. But I went in, looked for the keys, couldn't find the keys. I made a few phone calls. Nobody answered their phone. One person answered their phone. They were in Little Rock, taking care of some business. And
So how did the hearse disappear in 13 minutes?
13 minutes.
Right. Who drove it? How did it disappear?
One of the employees took the body to the airport. The arrangements were made at 10:37.
Is that one of the international shippings, either to Mexico or Guatemala?
Yes.
Do we have confirmation of that?
I can get confirmation. I can provide confirmation to you.
If it's appropriate, I'd like to, I know this is kind of separate but the same, but let me just kind of give you an appreciation for what we understood occurred and what, and this thing keeps going up. Yeah. So I got, when Roland called me to tell me that the inspector was there and that that was something to do with the hearse, and the vehicles that are there, have been there actually for a couple of weeks. They come from my funeral home in Little Rock. And we've had them over there in anticipation of getting open and have tried to get things in shape to open the facility and to be ready to do business. What we've tried to do every step of the way when we understood what the requirements was for the establishment license was to put that in order. We did have a little transitional period wherein we needed to, Rodney needed to close out which he was doing, and in conversation and discussion with how to do that, because you cannot have two establishment licenses. And so it was what was occurring, and we were working with Rodney Holmes, was getting those cases complete and not accepting any others. And at the same time, when that case was completed, there was a shipping a flight. That did not occur until the last day that that Rodney had his establishment license. From what I understand, 13th. That's the premise that we had operated under, because we had to have that done before we could appear before this board. So now I can't speak to how the hearse disappeared or why. I'm assuming, based on what Rodney shared with us, is that they had to get that remains to the airport. But that would have been Monday. Other than that, I think we have done everything we were told we needed to do according to your statute to meet the requirements for an establishment license. Now, if, and again, this suggestion that there may be additional sanction or investigation or complaints against Rodney occurred, because that's news to us as well. But I think that from our standpoint, today, what's for your board today is a request. He's still, as I understand it, still licensed director. So I'm just trying to, I guess, focus on our application, and if we need to, if he's not qualified, then we need to be told that we need to get a qualified director. Then we'll work from that aspect. But I'm not sure, and I guess this is a new process for me, at least here in Tennessee. So I'm just trying
I think you're right on target. It's your application for your license, not his, but by him being your manager and his past history of this board, then I think the water all runs together. And Mr. President, if I could, this is why I say what Mr. Williams gave to you, in my opinion, is deceptive. What he gave to you is exact and accurate and correct, but here's the part that got left off. He gave you an email that was dated Wednesday, June the 8th at 7:43 a.m. Okay. He responded to me, and I've not had a problem getting a response from him all last week. I was on vacation, and I responded to him, and he responded back very, very promptly. So on June the 8th at 8:17 a.m., which was about 30 minutes later than I responded to him, he said, "Thanks, Mr. Gribble. The matter has been resolved. I will, in fact, be permanently closed for business Friday, June 10, 2016, near the close of business, and I will be completely moved out of the property and keys turned in Monday via partial. If there's anything else your office requires of me, please do not hesitate to let me know." And again, based on his past history, I responded to him and I said, "Mr. Williams, is this definitely what will happen with no changes on these matters?" One question, one sentence. Here's his response. "Yes, this is definitely and exactly what will happen without any changes." Okay, I took the close of business on Friday to be about 4:30 or 5 o'clock. Okay, there's nobody in their office after 4:30 on Friday normally. I mean, there are occasions when people work after that, but it takes two people to close an establishment license. It takes someone to enter the information. It takes a separate person to approve that. So knowing that I was on vacation last week, and there are other people that can do it when I'm not here, but that's why I told him on Monday we would go in and officially close his license in the licensing establishment. Now, I did that based on his representation to me that on Friday afternoon he'd be closed. And we had gone through this whole thing with these bodies and what he was going to do with them, and exactly what I said: no further business activities may be conducted from, by, or for that particular establishment. And when I was talking about that particular establishment, obviously I was talking about his existing establishment.
And that's exactly what I took it to be. I had until Monday to get what I needed to do taken care of. That's exactly how I took it.
When we talked about money, you're not.
Listen to me. You said when I asked about money, I said, great, definitely. Now I know how to handle things. So everything's been taken care of. Because I knew I had to get the apostille. I knew when I was going to get the apostille. When I got the apostille, I knew when I was going to be able to ship the cremated remains. I knew ship the remains. I knew when I was going to be able to book the flight.
I have a quick question. So if you knew when you were going to be able to ship the body, why did you say that the establishment would be closed on Friday? If you already knew when the body was going to be shipped and that was going to be Monday, why did you say all business activities would cease on Friday?
Because all business activities did cease.
Was the-
I had funeral services Saturday.
That not be a business activity?
As far as receiving new business,
Right. Yeah, because in the email you said all business activity would cease on Friday, correct?
maybe I did. But business activity meaning business, office business, people coming in. If I already have something set up, it's already set up. I couldn't just take the people money and just go home, could I? I couldn't just leave the bodies in the funeral home, could I?
I think where the board member's trying to go with this is that you knew what you had going on, but you voluntarily submitted a day and a date.
Because we had to get on the agenda. He was saying that I needed to close so we can get on the agenda. It's like, hurry up and close so we can get on the agenda. Hurry up and close so we can get you on the agenda. Well, I'm just going to let Mr. Gosey know this.
So you made the determination to close and break the law so you could get on the agenda.
What law have I
Gentlemen,
broken?
how long have you known this fellow?
I've known him quite a while. I met Rodney several years ago in Little Rock when he worked for funeral homes in Little Rock area. What I understood, and we've tried to kind of stay close to this process because this was important for us to get open. And what we understood was, and I'm not sure that the original email, which he indicated was submitted, I think that Friday, that he knew exactly when the flight arrangements would be. But what Rodney had agreed to do and had done was refuse to take any new cases after, I believe it was the 10th. And so this was a matter of completing what was in-house. We couldn't obviously have him closed down and families affected by their desires to have things on a certain date and time. Now, what I thought in our discussion, what I thought Rodney did try to do was reach back out to Mr. Gribble by way of email just to clarify so that, because he, I think at that point knew that he had to finish these two outstanding cases, the Guatemala case and the Mexico shipping out. But the no new cases have come in, and absolutely none have come into that facility that we are requesting a license for.
Question, let me interrupt.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Williams, you said you had services on Saturday. Is that correct? Okay, now that's in addition to
That's
the
correct.
to the two shipping cases.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's the first we've heard of that. How many services did you have Saturday?
2.
See, the board keeps finding new information as of right now. I don't think we've got enough information to make a formal decision. Let me speak. Mr. Gosey and Mr. Walker, you guys seem to have a stellar reputation, and from Arkansas and your leadership positions, and we respect that. We've got a lot of history with Mr. Williams that we need to carefully consider and take. We've had some serious cases with Mr. Williams. And at one point in time, it came to us on whether we needed to close this funeral to protect the public health. And that's serious. And I think the board needs to make a good, informed decision.
Sure.
And I don't know that we have all the facts yet, because we're getting new facts as we're speaking.
Yes, sir. And I respect that, and of course, have had to been in a similar position where I've had to make certain decisions regarding it, and I think information is important. I would ask, though, from our perspective, if you don't mind for just a moment, and I know you know this better than I do, what we've tried to do from the beginning is to meet your requirements. As it stands today, I believe we have met your requirements, whether that is with having a licensed funeral director. At this time, he is currently licensed. Now, if there are things that would occur in the future, and again, the initial staff, all of that's from a business standpoint driven by need. I mean, the good problem to have is to have so much business until you got to have some more help. But you don't want to have too much help and not enough work for them to do. So we're trying to manage this in a way that it makes business sense as well. But again, I would only ask the board to, now if future action comes against any of us, obviously you have to take action at that time. But as it stands today, regardless of my history, his history, I believe we met your requirements. I do believe that. Now, if we haven't, specifically, I would like to at least leave here knowing what requirements we still need to meet if we've not done that. If that's, I just, for whatever it's worth, I'm just trying to be sure that as a, we do what we need to do or have to do to meet your expectations and your requirements and the requirements of the law. And if that is in question, then please let us know that so that we can fix it.
Speaking for myself, but it seems like we've been misled.
By us?
Through the emails, through the shipping, through the services you had on Saturday.
I cannot make a decision on this today. There's too many loose ends. Mr. Williams, if you stated that you closed the business on Friday and there was activity on Saturday, I have a problem with that. I understand that you've got to serve your families, but could you have held the services on Friday or prior to Friday? Because when you close the business, you're saying that we're not doing anything.
If I could, Mr. Davis,
Yes.
Mr. Helms, I don't want to say I'm assuming, but I'm thinking from when I talked to Rodney, I was under the impression that when Rodney said he was going to close his business on Friday, that he meant that he would not receive new business because he already still had those 2 services for Saturday. So we knew that he had 2 services coming up and the ship outs. But I was under the impression that when he said he was going to close Friday, meaning that he would not receive any more calls at that point, with the business going to be closed on the 13th and we're to appear before the board on the 14th. That delay, that time in there between Friday and the close of day Monday would give him an opportunity to complete the 2 funeral services on Saturday and get the 2 international shipments completed. Now that's how I interpret it. Now I don't know how the exchange, his communication with Mr. Gribble, how that exchange went, but that's the way I understood it from Rodney, that he would not receive any more calls on Friday, that the business would close, but not technically shut down, but he would cease receiving new business and not answer the phone. The signage would come down. He would complete everything on Saturday, and then on Monday, by the end of the day, he need to have gotten those 2 international shipments completed. That was the impression that we were given, and we were to be here on Tuesday. And so I don't know if he didn't articulate that exactly like that to Mr. Gribble, but that's the impression that I took it as.
I think Mr. Gribble articulated it exactly the way it should have been, and he asked him directly, was this the final, was everything finished, the business would not function after Friday the 10th, and he answered back, absolutely. Now, there is no
Gray matter.
No gray matter. It's done.
I really needed to talk to somebody, and I asked Mr. Gribble to please call me so I could get a clear, concise understanding. I needed a clear, concise understanding. Emails are streamed.
I believe he gave it to you, and you answered back.
Emails are streamed. When he gave me the email that I gave you, that let me know that, okay, I have till Monday to get this shipping done. And then I was able to say, yes, I'll be able to get everything that I need done as far as what I have going on with the families. Funeral services, when he said the 13th, I said, good, I got everything I need to do. I can get everything done, and we can move forward.
I'd like to hear one more time from the field rep. What was that comment from Mr. Williams in regards to the decedent in the back of the hearse?
Mr. Williams indicated that there was not a body in the hearse at the time. He said there's no body. Now, I will say this, there was an additional hearse behind the building, not on the side where these three were located. And I asked him, and he mentioned something about he had moved some supplies and things from his old funeral home, and there was an additional hearse behind that had some scaffolding or something in there. So, and I, he may have been talking about that. I don't know, but it was the one that I was talking about, and I asked him specifically if there was a body in there, and he told me no, there wasn't.
Body in the hearse that was in the middle between those other two vehicles?
Right, that's the one I was talking about.
And you
yeah.
conveyed that to him?
As best I could remember, I did, yeah.
I even never saw a hearse outside.
You were the manager of the firm and you didn't know there was a hearse outside?
The funeral home's not open. The only thing.
You were the manager of the firm and you didn't know there was a hearse outside?
I didn't know it was her. No, because when I drove up, I came in the front of the building.
Where did you think the shipping container was?
As far, I had made the arrangements to have the body shipped.
But where
And I
did
give
where did you
instructions.
think that human remains was at this time?
Well, we had to get it out of 5359 Night Arnold, and when it was taken from 5359 Night Arnold, it should have been taken to the airport. I got a call to come to the funeral home. I didn't even know what I was coming to the funeral home for. When I got there, I went in the funeral home. Shortly after that, Mr. Bozeman came in.
So real quick question. So, let me ask Mr. Bozeman first, and then I've got a follow-up question. So, these vehicles right here are at the new location or the old location? That's the vehicles? That's the three?
That's the new location.
That's the new location. So, when the body that was ready for transport left the old location, it should have gone immediately to the airport. Is that what you're saying?
Not until the flight had been confirmed.
When was the flight confirmed?
10:32.
So when it left the old location, where would it have gone?
We had to bring it off that property down there.
Okay, so you brought it to the new location.
That.
What day was that?
This was Monday.
Okay, so you took it from the old location to the new location before it went to the airport.
Correct.
On Monday.
On Monday.
Who transported the remains to the airport?
I believe Chris did.
Chris
Green, yeah.
I'll just speak from personal experience. When we have to make a airport trip, out of town trip, we don't sandwich that car between two other cars 6 inches apart. That it didn't look like it was ready to go to the airport at that time. It almost looked like it was holding a human remains for some time. I'm just thinking.
No, that's not accurate. Even the limousine, if Mr. Bozeman recalls, even the limousine behind that car had lamps and other things in that limousine that needed to be removed.
So I think what Mr. Helms is saying is that this hearse in the middle, which contained the body, that doesn't look like a car that's being ready to move in 13 minutes, right? I mean, if that's going to the airport in 13 minutes, it doesn't really look like it because it's kind of hemmed in. And so for it to magically disappear within 13 minutes of the investigator getting there, that just looks odd, right? I mean, that seems strange.
Well, like I said, they had to get the body out of the funeral home.
10:30.
In 9:30, 10:30.
He called you at 11 o'clock.
I think Mr. Gozer
You
called
made him
me.
at 11:30.
Mr. Gozer.
So somebody did some good driving to get that hearse in between those two limousines from 9:30 to 10:30 or 10:30 to 11 o'clock.
But the key. They already had the keys to the cars. When
Why don't you just call Chris and say, give me the keys to the car, we need to open up this hearse?
Hmm?
When you call Chris and say, give me the keys to the car, we need to open up this hearse so he can see inside. You said Chris took the body to the airport.
Yes.
The timestamp on the pictures that I took still indicate that the hearse was there with the shipping container in the hearse at 10:55, and it's time stamped on my phone when I took the pictures.
Question, Mr. Gribble, if we turn this over to the legal department, what would happen? I mean, what's the process?
Probably a question Mr. Glandolf can answer better than that, but I always want to be fair to the applicant, and let me read this email to you that was sent from Mr. Williams to Miss Rebecca Groves at the Department of Vital Records Section, Department of Health. It was sent on Friday, June the 10th at 11:09 a.m., and it says, "Greetings, I would like to apprise you of the permanent closing of Signature Funeral Services, LLC on June 13, 2016, and ask that any death certificate submitted to Vital Records under license number 1250 with the date of death of June 10, 2016 or greater be rejected, denied, and deemed fraudulent, as we're no longer accepting calls effective immediately." To my knowledge, and he goes on to talk about things that would not be exactly pertinent to that, but he did notify her that on June the 13th. Now, when Mr. Williams asked me to call him was one night about 7:40, I think that email came at 7:43, and I'm not sure what time I looked at it. I don't make it a practice of calling people outside of normal business hours unless there's something urgent. Mr. Williams, I think, was frantic at the time and thought it was urgent, in my opinion. However, I thought that her emails answered his question, and Mr. Gotzi had left me a Goetze, I'm sorry, I'm mispronounced that. Mr. Rowland had left me a message on my voice message in the office last Wednesday, and I had not checked those till over the weekend, or anyway, yesterday, Monday, Mr. Dennis Hamilton and I called Mr. Rowland and had a very good conversation with him. Now, and legal can speak up anytime they want to and tell me to be quiet. My suggestion is, I mean, Mr. Williams is entitled to a fair, he has a due process. He has a license. He's entitled to, if there is a complaint opened about yesterday, he's entitled to a fair hearing about that. I would submit to the board that you don't really consider that you make your decision based on the history that you have as to what you do, because, I mean, you've heard, I mean, Mr. Williams thinks it's one thing, Mr. Bozeman thinks it's one thing, I think it's one thing, and one day y'all may have to decide what the right thing is. But I mean, like I said, when I first started with the presentation to you, I said one of the things that concerned me was there's only one full-time licensed funeral director and embalmer at this location. There's a part-time person that works for another establishment that's going to be assisting. Mr. Williams has been found guilty and disciplined for unlicensed activity and directing other people to engage in unlicensed activity. That's my concern with this establishment license. That's the major concern that I have with it. Manager in his past history with this board. And I tried to be very clear with Mr. Williams, because we've been down several roads before, and I tried to draw a ring around the box, or I tried to put a box around the circle so that there couldn't be any misunderstandings. And obviously, I didn't do a good job at that, because he deemed it to be one thing and I deemed it to be something else. And emails can be misunderstood, and I understand that.
Members of the board, if I might, I respect what you just said, Mr. Gribble, and it reminds me a little bit about my style of management. But let me say for the record again that Rodney is not going to be the owner of this facility. Mr. Goetze and I and one other will own this facility, and we intend to be very active partners, operators of this facility. What we want to do is be sure that we meet the requirements. Now, it is not anticipated, frankly speaking, that Rodney would be the only licensed funeral director. We're merely trying to open this facility and then see how well we do. But we intend to have many licensed directors at this facility. We intend to be involved at this facility very, very, on a daily basis, I should say. He works for this new company. I hope that some of the previous issues that and I don't know all of them, frankly, I don't, that there will not be problems, at least as long as he's working for this company. And if it is, he won't be, frankly. Our reputation means everything to me. We've never had a complaint, ever. I think we run a stellar operations, and that's exactly what we'd like to continue to do here. What I would respectfully ask the board to do is tell us what we need to do to meet your requirements for opening. If something comes up after, that happens that disqualifies him, then I'm assuming that there's a process by which we have to replace him anyway. But we would just like to, open. Frankly, we got a pretty substantial investment sitting there, and if there's some specifically that the law states that we've not met, then we understand that. But I don't know, and maybe council could help us with this in terms of, is the history of the managers a factor in meeting your requirements? I don't know the answer to that. I'm just curious to know. What we tried to do was get everything done that we needed to get done to meet your requirements, and that's what we've trying to present today. And I'm sorry it kind of got here, and this is some of which we knew about the transition to try to get him closed so that we could get open, but I kind of thought it was, pretty clear. I don't think at all, frankly, and in my experience that there's any attempt to be deceitful by anybody. I wouldn't want to think that, and if that were the case, I wouldn't want to be in business with somebody like that. I wouldn't want to have someone like that work for me. So please understand that we intend to be active, involved in this process. Roland intends to be, he's already on the process of getting his reciprocal licenses here. We intend to grow, and we intend to add on new funeral directors in this marketplace. And we intend to be a good business for families first, obviously. Obviously, we need to meet your requirements. And so that's what I'd like for the.
Did council have an answer to that question?
Yes, generally I do. The first question I think was, well, what would come of this regarding the activity that happened over the weekend? If the board wished to pursue that, generally our standard operating procedure is to open up a complaint. A complaint would be opened against Mr. Williams and his previous funeral establishment. For potential unlicensed activity. We would have to garner all of the documents, information, emails that we received, and there would have to be some kind of a determination to be made exactly when was the license surrendered and when was the actual activity taking place. The issue involved poses a difficult issue to look at is that the license has an expiration date on it, and the only way to get rid of a license prior to an expiration date is to submit basically a voluntary surrender of license. And a voluntary surrender of license should be a document or some kind of statement that is written down that is very concise as to exactly what is going to happen so that there is not a miscommunication as to what can be done. Now, generally, the surrender of a license surrenders all activities, all business activities, complete and in toto, unless those are reserved specifically in writing, and we've done that before as a department, meaning I'm not taking any new persons, but I would like to finish X, Y, and Z and continue to maintain that property right of my license to do that. That's something that we would have to look to in the complaint. I'm not telling you what happened, I'm just telling you the process. So far as the questions are concerned as to whether or not the establishment has met the requirements of a licensure and whether or not the board has the ability to deny a license based on the requirements, I don't believe that there is a dispute as to meeting the licensure requirements. My understanding is that this establishment has met all the requirements for licensure in attempting to get a license. Mr. Williams' license, his own license as a funeral director, my understanding, is currently active. He does not have any blemishes on it that would keep him from being a manager of any establishment that he went to. With that being said, each establishment may be denied a license based on 17 different activities that could happen that could prevent them from getting a license. So though you meet the requirements, there are also denial issues that could happen. Specifically, those are found in 62.5.317. The two that I think that you all are discussing currently is 62.5.317A5 and B6. A5 indicates that the board may refuse to grant a license to any applicant for or holder of the license who knowingly permits an unlicensed person to engage in the profession or business of funeral directing or embalming. That would be the first question, as to whether or not the board could could deny a license based on that. The second is under 625317B6, which is, it specifically says, in addition, the board may refuse to grant or may suspend, revoke, or refuse to renew any license granted for the operation of a funeral establishment or to any funeral director and embalmer for aiding or abetting an unlicensed purchase practice within the funeral profession. So that would be the determination that I hear for the board to make today is based on the information that you've all been provided, whether or not the current applicant, in fact, was knowingly permitting the unlicensed person, whether or not the previous establishment was unlicensed because they surrendered their license, engaging in unlicensed activity, or whether or not they were assisting by aiding and abetting that previously licensed establishment in engaging in unlicensed activity. The first decision may have to be made by the board in that consideration is whether or not there was actually an active license yesterday. So it's your all's decision. But that's what I see as that's the only reasons that I see that the board could deny this license. Though Mr. Williams could have a history of disciplinary actions with the board, he currently has an active license. That license is good. Because he's had past disciplinary actions, I don't think this board has the authority to deny a license to an establishment just because they don't approve of this person being a manager.
And as far as the unlicensed activity question, should that be handled in a separate, again, if that investigation is open, should that be handled in a separate hearing, not necessarily today?
Generally, yes. If you were to take any action against either the signature, that would have to be done through the normal process, through a formal hearing or whatever, however that comes about.
I just didn't know if we could consider, even if we felt here today that unlicensed activity had taken place, I didn't know if we could consider that since an actual formal hearing had not taken place.
I understand. The answer would be no.
Okay.
Clarification. In the director's report, action that was taken last month concerned unlicensed activity by this individual. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's proven. That happened, and we took action on it. It was a $2,500 civil penalty, and it said an unlicensed individual signed as a funeral director on an establishment form. Establishment owner and manager directed unlicensed employees to engage in activities that require licensure and engage in an act, omission, or practice that is misleading or deceptive. So that's what we're dealing with. And we took action on that, and
May I say something? I just got a license, a funeral director license. After I signed it, I just renewed my license. My personal license for something that I did or that happened while I was there. You renewed my license. This board renewed my license.
yeah, of course, you have a license. You're in good standing. I mean, as the attorneys spoke, you're signing on as a manager of a new firm, and we have to approve that new establishment. That's what we're dealing with. And
if you please the board, if the board is saying to us that he is not eligible to be that manager, then we've not met your requirement. But everything that we have been told leading up to this point and today, as long as he was not managing two places at the same time, your requirement. So I'm not, I didn't know this here was going to, I don't want to, I just would ask the board to please keep this kind of separate for us. I know it's kind of one and the same, but as at today, right now, if you please, he is a licensed funeral director, which I believe us to meet your requirement. If that changes, then we've obviously got to make an adjustment as well at that time. And I'm assuming, I know in Arkansas there's a process by which you have 30 days to replace a person that either leaves or dies or is sanctioned or suspended, etc. I don't know what the law is here, but whatever that procedure is, we would have to follow that procedure, and we would do that. But we would ask that not be held against us today. We are ready to go do business, and we've got a substantial investment, and we really believe we can provide a valuable service. And you should know our commitment, mine personally and Roland, that we're going to be involved in this business day to day.
6 of the board members here are funeral home.
Oh, okay.
So we
understand.
we respect your position. We do.
I want to go back and ask legal a question here in regards to the Charter for Profit Corporation document. Let me make sure I understand that correctly. With that name, Orville Abrams Jr., CPA, is this completed properly or not?
Well, it is. That's actually filed. If it's filed at the Secretary of State's office, it was accepted by the Secretary of State's office. The issue that I have with it is that it's almost creates a situation where we wouldn't be able to actually serve anybody at the location because the person to whom would sign that document is not actually there, never going to be there.
From a legal standpoint, what does that mean? I mean,
It means we would have to go down and probably have Mr. Bozeman or somebody personally serve the location.
are we saying we need to have this document done differently?
I mean, it was accepted by the Secretary of State's office, so if it's accepted and filed by the Secretary of State's office, it's a good charter, good information and whatnot. I just had a concern as to exactly who is is your agent for service process actually going to be located at that building?
It wouldn't be
But we
grounds
don't-
for denial, though.
We don't have to do it to the registered agent for the service process. We could do it to Mr. Williams himself as the manager. We can effectuate service on the manager. We can do that. And one thing when you brought it up was it's probably something that needs to be changed in the future so that you can so that we wouldn't have any.
Bozeman, what you found so far, did they meet the approval for our license?
I have a problem with the deception over the incident yesterday with the body and the hers. I have a problem with that, but that's, for someone to actually come out and tell me that there's not a body out there and then you go out and the vehicle's gone, that bothers me, but there again, that's not my cause, so.
Josie, are you in the process of reciprocating your license with Tennessee?
Yes, sir. I just need to schedule to take my examination.
Okay.
And if
You made application, that was
Yes,
my
sir.
question to Ms.
yes, I
Moses.
have. I'm
Ye-
sorry.
Oh, yes, he's made application and he's been approved for testing for the, for his Tennessee
All his
funeral
rules
laws,
test,
rules and
okay.
tests, yes.
And when we spoke, when we spoke yesterday, I asked a question in the event that I do get my license in the state of Tennessee, could I serve as manager in the state of Tennessee with the Tennessee license? And I think we're still kind of out on that one as to whether I could do that or not, given that I manage and own a funeral home in Arkansas.
Yesterday when we talked, I told Mr. Rowland, I said that may be something that the board would need to decide because, like you said, he does manage a funeral home in Arkansas. He works there full time. He a 3-hour drive from where he is to Memphis to this particular location.
And my work,
He's gonna move here.
and my work days here since April, since we started this venture, has been I'm here Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays of every week. Every week, Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays.
At the Memphis location?
Yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Rowland was very forthcoming and very upfront about everything that we discussed yesterday in probably about a 30 or 40-minute conversation.
Mr. Williams, are you licensed in another state?
I'm licensed in Arkansas. I've been licensed 16 years.
Had any issues with the Arkansas State Board?
I've never had an issue or a sanction or anything in Arkansas, but I've never owned a business in Arkansas. If I may address the board, ownership is not for everyone. I can acknowledge that ownership is not for everyone. I experienced some things that I never thought I would experience owning a funeral home. My business grew too fast, and to be by yourself and your business grows fast. Anything that grows fast gets stretch marks. And I got stretch marks in Tennessee. I've always been a very professional, very straightforward, outgoing funeral director and embalmer. I've always given my best at everything that I have done concerning this industry. This is an industry that I love, that I deeply care for. When you deal with people, you deal with employees, you deal with finances. When you have to deal with all of those issues, it takes away a little bit of who you are as a professional. If you have to deal with all of it yourself, I decided not to have to deal with it myself. The only thing that I want to do is be able to go to work and serve families the way that I was taught to do, the way that I know how to do, without having to worry about the light bill needing to be paid.
So let me ask legal one more question. So just in your opinion, do you feel that everything is in order? Everything that is required is in order to approve the application? Is that an opinion you could give?
I honestly have not seen the application, so if you're asking for my exact legal opinion, I cannot give that right now.
Yeah.
I would need some time to review the application and make that certification to you.
Okay.
It is my understanding that it is complete. If the board does not, if the board would like for them to go back and change the agent for service of process, because he knowingly is not in the building and cannot actually accept service of process, then you could request that they go back and change that, I believe, to ensure that it's shored up. Other than that, if there's no other issues with the application, what I was stating earlier is basically that though you meet the requirements of an application, the board has the ability to deny an applicant if they have done certain things. And the question that I've been hearing all day is whether or not the applicant here with the two hearses in the beginning in front of them were actually aiding and abetting or knowingly allowing Mr. Williams to go forward with their business that is previously, that he surrendered the license on Friday, whether or not they did that. And if the board finds, it makes that determination saying, yes, we believe he was conducting unlicensed activity and doing that, then it's within your power to deny the license based off of that.
So we wouldn't necessarily have to have a separate hearing first on that issue.
No, not for denial of a license, because in the legal reason why you do not need a hearing to have a denial of license is that there is not a property right yet granted.
Okay.
And so they are not required, they have no constitutional or state requirements to give them a hearing before this board in order to deny a license. What you are doing right now is sufficient, so long as we are providing some evidence forward as to the allegations, which is being done currently.
I have one more question. Mr. Williams, in speaking to Mr. Gribble and stating that your business would be closed on Friday, did you inform him that you had 2 services on Saturday?
I don't recall informing him that I had 2 services on Saturday, but when I did send an email after I understood that everything would be done on the 13th. I sent Rebecca Groves at the health department an email stating that on the 13th I will be officially closed. I understood it to be the 13th.
What about the other body, Mr. Williams? Where was it shipped to and when?
That body is going to Guatemala.
Is going?
Is going to
Where
Guatemala.
is it at now?
And it has been transferred into custody of another funeral home in Arkansas.
So it didn't go to the airport?
You told us earlier it was going to the airport.
The one to Mexico went to the airport.
Okay, so the one that was in the hearse at the new location was the one going to Mexico?
Yes.
Okay.
The other one was transferred out to another funeral home in Arkansas.
Okay.
What was this stored at?
Oh, that body left Friday.
What was it stored at before you took it to Arkansas?
Both bodies were in the Knight Arnold, 5359 Knight Arnold Road location.
Whole location.
Yes.
So what was the purpose, I guess, of taking the body that was going to Mexico? What was the purpose of taking it from the old location to the new location? Can you tell me that purpose one more time? Because the new location wasn't licensed yet either.
It's not licensed, but the body never went in the building. The body was in the hearse. When MLGW came, the people, Chris and whoever was at the funeral home, they loaded that body up and brought it to the parking lot.
Okay.
Was anybody in that facility when you arrived?
We were moving a bunch of stuff.
No, sir, there was nobody there. At the new location, no, there was nobody there.
I mean, this may not be relevant. The old location that which is your new location, that was closed and padlocked, no utilities, and I understand there were 2 unclaimed bodies there.
What facility is that?
Okay,
What facility?
these aren't the same bodies,
No,
are they?
no, that's not the same funeral home.
Okay.
No, that was way back several months ago, I
Okay,
think.
I just want to make sure that wasn't the
no,
same.
we don't want no connection.
No,
to
that's what
that.
we're trying to prevent.
No, I understand.
Okay.
Yes, sir. No, at all. And if I might say one other thing to the board, I don't want to belabor this, but please understand, we hear, just like you're hearing these concerns, and that is not how we do business. That is not how we intend to do business, and I can promise you that we will have no parts of anything that might be perceived. We're going to try to be sure that things are crystal clear. And so that's just not the applicants that's before you. I will assure you of that. I didn't spend 30 years of my life in public service without a whole lot of transparency and questions about decisions that I had made. So please understand, we strive to make this better. I mean, it's our hope that it's better, and we know that if we do right by families as we have, we'll be blessed for that. And that's what we want to do.
Speaking for myself, it's not my intent to not license establishments that meet all the requirements. Like I said, I'm an owner. There's some other owners up here as well. That's not our purpose. Our purpose is to make sure it's done the right way in the right capacity. Since I've been on the board, I've never had an establishment request like this and have so many loose ends and so many discrepancies. It just doesn't smell right. But it's not my purpose to deny something to keep something from happening, because you serve a lot of families. Signature serves a lot of families in West Tennessee, and I admire that. I admire Mr. Williams. I understand that, and I understand how you said that owning a business isn't for everybody. Because the last time you were here, you said, again, that your business grew too fast, that you were being pulled in too many different directions. I remember that, because I've been there, done that. But I also don't want to shut the door on you and take that away from you. I don't know that we have all the information that we need to make an informed decision right now. That's just my feelings right now, and I'm just a board member.
But let me ask you just one more thing. So you had mentioned that it's not your plan to just have one licensed director.
That's correct.
Do you have any thoughts of when you would add someone else, or have?
Absolutely. When we get a business volume to a point where we can justify that,
Okay.
we would. I mean, I look at those challenges as good problems to try and solve. But we wouldn't want to overdo it coming in, because then we put ourselves behind the 8 ball, and we just, we are hopeful, frankly. We feel really good about this, but as soon as possible. But again, that won't stop Roland from getting his reciprocal agreement, and hopefully, if that's permissible by the board, to also co-manage I can let you know we're gonna hold hands through this process. We didn't make this kind of investment to let somebody else just run with it. It's just not going, that's not how I do business. Good thing about it, Rodney says that's not his strength anyway, so my strength is managing money, so I will do that well.
But being a manager of a funeral home has a lot of responsibilities.
Absolutely.
It does.
Absolutely.
It's-
It does.
I mean,
No question about it.
he's on the line.
No question about it.
And we've got a lot of instances where that wasn't taken care of. That's where we're coming from.
That won't be the case here. I can tell you that now.
Too, am a manager of a funeral home, and I'm a firm believer that you should know everything that goes on in the day-to-day operations.
I'm gonna ride the elephant in the room. I personally don't have a problem with the application. I do have a problem with the manager and what we have discussed today. His past, his inability to be able to document his timetable correctly and other things, the judgment that was heard earlier. I just can't go with that, so I'll make a motion that this application be denied.
Do I have to wait for a second for discussion? I wasn't sure what the protocol. Okay. And so I agree. Obviously, there's some past history there, and I think certainly whatever happened with that hearse, seems very irregular. I don't know if we've heard enough evidence today to determine exactly what happened, but it seems very odd. But given that we don't really have the full scope of evidence perhaps before us today, I don't know if I can make a determination of what happened there, other than I know it seems very strange. But given, I think, maybe what our counsel has said as far as the application pretty much being in order, other than the agent being in Arkansas rather than Tennessee, and again, even the misgivings with the manager, I guess, for me, and again, I think there is some obvious history there. And again, even with the hearse, there's some irregularities there. But he is a licensed director, and so we haven't denied that license yet. So I don't know if I personally could deny this establishment license, given that the director does have a Tennessee license. That hasn't been denied. And so the only... Again, it's basically that agent being in Arkansas other than Tennessee, perhaps, is really the only issue with the application before us today that I can say, that's definitely been stated by counsel. That's why I might have concern denying the license.
The strength of this application is from the partners.
Yes.
That's a strength.
Yes.
And I respect the partners.
We table this till next month, legal. Is that a problem if you table this matter to next month to get this agent into Tennessee out of Arkansas?
What would be your concern?
That'd be proper.
Tabling this until next month, and bring
Yes.
it back before
Yes.
the board.
Okay. question. When would the next Tennessee law test be available for Mr. Gosey?
Tennessee law test, he would just have to get with the conference and schedule it when he's ready to take the test. So we don't have any discretion over when he takes it. It's just up to Mr. Gossi to schedule that test.
It's available Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Whatever the applicant's choosing is. Once they're approved, and Ms. Mosby said that he has been approved, he's made the application to us, and she's approved him to test. So it's
And I think there's,
ready to take it. That's in his court.
the way I understand it, there's still some, it's undecided on whether being a manager in Arkansas and being a manager for the funeral home in Tennessee, is that workable? Is that my understanding? I mean, that's
a
for us to
question the board
determine.
will
Okay.
eventually answer.
In this case, I mean, to me, that would add strength to the application.
I asked the questions, but, and maybe this is a legal counsel question as well. And could not the board consider a conditional approval of this application upon when effective upon when Mr. Gosey's license is secured or another funeral director is in place? I hear your concerns, and I'm trying to alleviate some of these things. The address issue is something we can change that right now.
I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
That's
So,
not an issue.
but as you said, you know, when you're sitting on an investment and we're ready to go, I want to be sure we meet your requirements, and I want to try to alleviate as many of your concerns as we can. And we sort of, if we could just, hearing your concerns, if we could be permitted to fix this quickly and not have to wait, you know, a full month, because I think we can address this issue. I mean, I think Roland can take this test today, probably. I don't know how they scheduled that, but as soon as possible, and we wouldn't necessarily have to wait, or we may be able to identify another manager today. I'm just using that literally, but I would very much plead with the board to give us some consideration as to, you know, since we did everything to meet your requirements, and that since there's no pending complaint, and that he does have your license, you know, we thought we did what we're supposed to do. And I just want to ask us to give that some consideration, because we
Were you aware of the past incidents with Ms. Williams?
I mean, I had heard some things here and there, but no, sir, I was not, and I have to give your investigator points, because when we met with him, and we all did, when he did this initial inspection, he said, look, you can go to the website and look up things and find out things. And frankly, for the last month and a half, I've been in Atlanta. My father is dying. And I drove here from Atlanta today because this was important to me. And I'm going right back there. And I'm not asking for your sympathy or anything. I mean, in spite of the fact I'm in the business, it's still tough when it's your dad. But, you know, I want to do what we're supposed to do. And if it's the board wishes to deny us, I would just only ask, tell me what we got to do and to fix it. I mean, that's what I would want. I mean, just what do we do wrong? What do we got to do?
And I think you definitely mentioned this at the beginning, but that was a little while ago. Mr. Gosey, tell me again, you are in Arkansas, you're a licensed funeral director?
Licensed funeral director and embalmer.
And embalmer.
And I sell pre-needs and deputy coroner in the county where I reside.
Third generation.
Third generation funeral home owner.
You feel like you could take the test here in Tennessee pretty quickly?
Oh, yes, sir.
Would a conditional acceptance, would that be proper with our council? Conditional upon Mr. Gosey receiving his Tennessee license?
Generally, when we craft something like that, I would suggest, I think that yes, it can be done, but in order to do that, you should spell out the very specific terms that cannot be misconstrued. So the terms could be generally what we see is it says the license will be approved upon X, Y, and Z happening, and the determination as to whether or not X, Y, and Z happened is to the executive director, and that they would basically make some kind of a writing statement letter stating you have done X, Y, and Z, and pursuant to the board's authorization, your license shall be granted as of this day, or whatnot. So whatever those would be, they should be spelled out very, very specifically so that there's no misunderstanding, because Mr. Gribble, and that be the one to make the decision, and he wouldn't, if he's not comfortable in understanding exactly whether or not he has the authority to do that, then generally he would wait until the next board meeting to get clarification if something arose that was not considered.
I mean, personally, I think Mr. Gosi has he appears to have a very qualified history. I would feel comfortable doing that. I mean, it's approving the application pending the passage of that Tennessee test. But what would the X, Y, and Z need to be specifically? I don't know. For your purposes, Mr. Gribble.
And just as long as it, like Mr. Glandorf said, as long as it was clear as to what you want X, Y, and Z to be.
Yeah.
If you want that to be that Mr. Gosi passes his funeral director's test and is issued a license, and I can administratively approve his license because he has no reason, I assume, from what he said, I don't know of any reason why I couldn't do that. And then once that license issued, did he be, they can amend their application to reflect him as the manager if that's what the board wants done. And then if you want the agent of service changed, that can be, they've indicated that's no problem to change that. As long as I know what it is, then I'm very comfortable doing that. The board has done that before, pending receipt of a certificate of occupancy or pending receipt of some particular form or document or something like that. That's I'm always glad to do what the board wants done. I never want to do any more than what the board wants done. So I always tend to err on the side of caution.
I understand where Mr. Walker's coming from, that he'd like to be in business today. I understand that. So if we put a condition on Mr. Gosi passing a test, that's going to be no funeral activity until something is approved. I mean, I just want to make sure that we're all clear on that.
If I could say, just suggest two conditions. I mean, obviously the address is, we'll do that. We'll get that changed to whatever the council recommends it needs to be. And either Mr. Gosi passing the test or we identify another licensed funeral director who I guess is in good standings. I don't know what that means, but either those two conditions be met, then we'd be able to get an establishment license. But I think, he'll have that done this week.
And just so we're clear and there's no misunderstanding, a complete disclosure, you can take the test anytime you can schedule it with the conference and go take it. Now, if you should fail the test, you have to wait 30 days to take it again. So just make sure you're prepared to take it before you go take it the first time.
That's why I added that other.
I understand. I understand.
I would have no problem with that, under those conditions. Mr. Gosi is licensed and serves as manager.
Motion from Mr. Rom has failed for lack of a second. Mr. Cochran, do you want to make a motion?
Okay, so, and just, again, just asking publicly your opinion. I'm very comfortable with Mr. Gosi. I'm comfortable with that part. As far as the other, if they find another manager, do we want to make that conditioned upon Mr. Gribble's opinion of that manager, pending, there's no excessive history or... Because, like I said, we know right now that there is no history with Mr. Gosi. Because, I could confidently do that.
I feel comfortable with Mr. Gosi.
Yeah.
But with an unnamed person that we haven't met, because typically we would meet the manager at this opportunity, I would have a problem, and I don't think Robert or Mr. Gribble would feel comfortable with those kind of...
Because obviously the manager is important. Okay. So I will make a motion that we approve the application pending Mr. Gosi's passage of the test and obtaining a Tennessee license and being listed as a manager of the funeral home.
I have a question for Mr. Gosey, though. If we go in this direction and you're the listed manager, how much time are you going to devote to be on that property?
I would be on the property Monday through Wednesday. And if I need to be back for services, whenever, we have a small farm back in Arkansas. We service about 60 to 65 families a year. And so I have a lot of downtime because of the low volume. So that frees me up to be in Memphis, you know, on a more regular or more consistent basis. Certainly if we have services. But my commitment is Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and I've done that already since April, since we started the project.
And I guess my motion would be intended to be listed maybe as one of the manager, because I don't think that we can necessarily say that Mr. Williams can't be because he's licensed, right?
Hey, we only have one person to be the
Okay,
manager.
can only be one.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So we only looked at one, whomever that is.
Right. Is that would that be irregular for a manager to only be there 3 days a week? I'll ask that. I mean, as someone who doesn't have a history with this.
That's the piece that I'm a little concerned.
Mhm.
I understand your credentials and where you're coming from, and I respect that. But to serve the people in Tennessee, the families of Tennessee, I think it's important for that manager to be involved and be there serving those families. That concerns me, even though we're going in this direction.
I mean, and I don't want to speak for Roland, he speaks for himself, but I think if you would give us a little time, if this business demands more, we won't hesitate to do what it takes to be sure that we are effectively serving families. I mean, that's just what we do. Starting up the business is one phase. Doing business at a particular volume is a total different thing. Our family is based on the demand of business, and I hope it's a lot, frankly. I mean, I really do. But that means we would have even more qualified managers or licensed funeral directors at that facility.
So let me amend my motion. So, again, approval of the application pending Mr. Gosey's passage of the test and obtaining a license. To be honest with you, I really don't want to dip my hand into who he appoints as a manager or not a manager. If they're, obviously if they're licensed in the state of Tennessee. My motion is pending Mr. Gosey's passage of the Tennessee test and obtaining a license. I'll make a motion to approve. Does that make sense?
Include him being named the establishment manager?
No, that's my amendment. He did. So my motion is just that he passes the Tennessee test and obtains a license.
Mr. Williams could remain as, I'm just asking for
Yes,
clarity,
that's
so I
correct.
know and understand what.
That's
what
correct.
you're
Like I said,
saying.
I feel a little uncomfortable as a board telling a private establishment who they have to choose as a manager, as long as that manager is obviously licensed by the state of Tennessee. So, again, that would be my motion, that he obtains his Tennessee license, or passes the test and obtains the Tennessee license.
A motion on the floor, Mr. Cochran. Do we have a second? Cochran's motion will fail for lack of a second. No back.
I'll make a motion that will approve the licensure pending Mr. Gosey's passing and getting a Tennessee license, and that he'll be the named manager for Signature Funeral Home by Premier. That's my motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Helms, a second by Mr. Cochran. The motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Roll call, Ms. Mosby.
Dennis Bridges,
Yes.
Mark Hawthorne,
Yes.
Robert Davis. Jeff Duffer,
I don't agree.
no, okay. Robert Helms,
Yes.
David Neal,
Yes.
Charles Rom.
No.
Mr. President, we have 5 yes and 2 no. The motion passes.
If it's appropriate, we'd just like to thank you all. We hear you loud and clear, and I promise you, you won't have to worry about us, okay? Thank you so much. Mhm.
That vote was on your faith.
Well, thank you. I've been there, and folks have put a lot of faith in me before, and I've tried not to let them down. I'm not perfect, but I do my best. Thank you.
Josie, if you'll get with me afterwards, we'll have a brief conversation about making sure you know the process about, and Ms. Mosby, we'll be glad to help you with that so that you.
Business to come before the board. No new business, I ask for an adjournment.
So move.
Second.